social work. He's a therapist from Peachtree City. He went to Valdosta State. He's written several books. One is Beyond the Bottle. You guys may have heard of some of these books. He's written quite a few articles too. He is here to speak with you guys today. He is a therapist from he has an office in Peachtree City. And this is another therapist. Her name is Kimberly, and she's here to help him out today, okay? So let's give him a big hand.
Thank you, Kathy. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Kathy, for inviting me to come hang out with y'all this morning. So I wanted to tell you a story about a friend of mine. This young guy I know, he's about 85, and he loves to fish. And so a few weeks ago, he was down by the river doing the thing he loves to do most. He was fishing, he was casting, and all by himself, nice and quiet, just the way he liked it. Suddenly he heard this voice. His voice said, "Hey, pick me up." He looked around this way and looked around that way, didn't see anybody, so he went back to his fishing. And the voice said again, "No, down here, pick me up." So he looked down and he saw a frog. He said, "Are you talking to me?" And the frog said, "Of course I'm talking to you. You don't see anybody else here, do you?" So my friend bent down and he picked up the frog, and the frog said, "I'm a magical frog. If you kiss me, I'll turn into a beautiful bride and I'll marry you today." My friend thought for a minute and took the frog and put it in his pocket and started to walk away. And the frog said, No, you must not have heard me. I said, I'm a magical frog. If you kiss me, I'll turn into a beautiful bride and marry you today." My friend said, "At my age, I'd rather have a talking frog." Thank y'all for having me today. I want to talk to you a little bit, if it's okay, about stories and the power of storytelling and why we tell our stories and what our stories do for us. So there's a definition that I found that I really like a lot about storytelling. It's from a book called Boundless, the Importance of Stories. And the definition that they use of storytelling is, they say storytelling is conveying events in words, sounds, or images, often by improvisation or embellishment. And here's an important fact. Stories have been used in every single culture. As long as there have been people, we've been telling stories. Stories predate written language. Stories predate even spoken word. You've seen the drawings on the cave walls and those sorts of things. Those are all attempts to tell stories. So telling stories is a part of who we are. It's a part of our DNA as human creatures. So the question I want to try to get to today, to try to start to answer is, why do we tell our stories? I think the really short version of that answer is because stories are important. But I want to dig into a little bit further. Why are they so important to us? And so I'll begin by telling you a little bit about my story, and you can sort of see some of my journey and kind of where I started and where I am today. What I want to tell you about is the night and the day that changed everything for me. So I found myself sitting on the edge of my bed, and I looked down in my hand, and I found a pistol there. And it was way in the middle of the night, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I hadn't been asleep, but I couldn't piece together the hours that led up to that moment. And I looked at the pistol and I didn't think, wow, where did this come from, or why do I have this? I thought, dang, this thing is heavy. And I'm not sure why I thought that, but that was just sort of a random thought that was going through my mind. See, I was going through a really, really tough time. My life was falling apart pretty quickly. To say I was unhappy is kind of like saying the ocean's a little bit salty. So I sat there on the edge of my bed with this pistol in my hand, and I'm not sure what I was thinking, what I was planning. In fact, today, years later, I can't tell you what I wanted to do, but all I can say is that I didn't want to die, but I sure didn't want to go on living like I had been those last few years. See, I had a secret, and it was heavy, and it was dark, and it was painful, and I didn't know what to do about it. I felt alone, I felt isolated, I felt trapped. And I couldn't figure out what to do about this secret. The secret involved alcohol, involved lots of it. Secret involved depression with a big D, not the I'm a little blue depression, but the kind where I felt like my soul was being squeezed. I felt like I couldn't do anything. I felt like even washing a dish seemed too hard of a task to take on. So that night by the time I got to that place, I was in a pretty bad spot, but I didn't get there all at once. I got there slowly, sort of day by day, over many years. I always felt different then. I always felt like everybody around me got like a memo or a handbook or an instruction pamphlet or got invited to a class on how to do life that I didn't get. I always felt just different than everybody else. And I thought about this for a long time. And I think that the first time I remember feeling different than everybody else, I was about age 7. So I was it was the second week of school. I guess I would have been in second grade. And it was one of those things at school where the teachers have the parents come in, and the parents and the teachers meet, and the parents look at the artwork and the stories and get to know each other. The open house is what they call it. They still do that today. And so this was open house day in second grade, and I was there, and the school had made arrangements to put all the kids in the gym with this. I don't know if she was a teacher or a volunteer or just some really unlucky person that got to spend an hour with 50, sugared up 6 and 7 year olds. So we're in there playing and basketball and running around and having a good time doing whatever kids do. And she says this, she says, "Who wants to hear a story?" Now, have you ever been in a room full of kids and somebody said, "Who wants to hear a story?" It's like, because kids, it's like a stampede. Kids love stories. And I'm the same way. I always have loved stories and still do. Love to read movies, plays, love to hear people tell stories. But something about me just said, no, you know what? As much as I love stories, I don't want to be a part of this. I want to be different. So all these kids were running this way. I turned and walked the other way. Went to the other end of the other end of the gym and found me a mat and sat there, arms crossed, determined not to have fun. So I sat there for just a little while, and the parents started filtering in and picking up kids, and I saw my mother and father come in, and saw my dad sort of searching the group of kids because there's still a bunch of kids there looking for me, and he had this smile on his face, and he looked, and then he found me sort of sitting off in the corner by myself, and this smile faded, and the look on his face changed a little bit, and I don't know if I recognized it then, but as I look back, I see that was the first time that my behavior was weird. My behavior was different. My behavior wasn't like everybody else's for some reason. And it would take me years to figure out why. But here's what I did learn. I learned that kids that are different have a rough go of it. The kid in my class named Stephanie, who had some sort of spinal issue and used crutches to walk, boy, she had a rough go. The kid in my class named Kelly, who was a little bit heavier than everybody else, she became the fat kid. Boy, they gave her a hard time. And I made up my mind, I did not want to be different. I wanted to be plain, vanilla, middle of the road, no attention whatsoever. I didn't want people to know how weird I felt inside. So I went through the rest of school feeling that way until about age 15, when I discovered alcohol. I took a few shots of whiskey with two of my buddies. And I felt completely different when I started drinking. Actually, that's not true. I didn't feel different. I felt normal. I felt like what I imagined everybody else felt like all the time. So without alcohol, I was awkward and nervous and disconnected. But with alcohol, I could talk to people. I could make eye contact. I could even talk to girls, which was a big deal for me. Girls are scary. But it's just because I got older doesn't mean I got better at life. What I got better at was fitting in and hiding how different I was. Through school, I became a chameleon. I would jump from group to group and be associated with these groups. But the problem was I never was fully into any group. I was on the perimeter. I was on the surface. Everything looked normal, looked like I was involved, but I wasn't fully plugged into any groups. And as I got older and older, I perfected that chameleon act. I could go anywhere and do anything with other people, but I never could quite fully connect. I could go into a room and I could backslap and I could And how about them Braves with the best of them? And on the outside, everything looked good, but on the inside, I felt flawed and broken. So what did I do? I did what people do. I kept going forward. I got married, got a job. I bought a house, had a child, got another job, bought a bigger house, went on vacations, went on another. I did life. I did what you're supposed to do. Eventually, I had everything that people want in career, family, a home, all those sorts of things. And I used to say, I go to work every day, I mow the grass on Saturday, and I go to church on Sunday. What else can a fella do? That's the whole sum of life, right? So on the outside, I was doing what people do, but on the inside, I still felt like a mess. I felt broken, and I couldn't figure out what to do. These waves of depression would overtake me. I felt like a little boy stepping into the surf for the first time and just getting knocked down. But I would push through and go to work all week, but then sleep all weekend. Eventually, it got to where it was hard for me to work. And one day, I went to work feeling terrible, a little too much alcohol, a little too much depression, and had this conflict with one of my supervisors. I got there and it was a cubicle kind of environment, and this supervisor walks up to me. His name was Frank. He said, "Clay, I need you to do something." I don't even remember what it was. Something perfectly reasonable, and I just lost my mind. And I started yelling at him. He was a little guy, and I stood up and I got way too close to him, close enough to where these days I probably would have been arrested because it was pretty ugly, yelling and screaming. And here's what I remember. It was like I was watching this event from 50 feet away. It was like I was watching somebody else go crazy, but it was me. And all these little heads were popping up, and these people go, "Oh, there's a crazy guy," and they were hiding. And so I had this big blow up at work that was really painful and really embarrassing. So I went home that night, and I tried desperately to get rid of the pain I was feeling. I went to the only tool that I had, which was alcohol and loneliness, but it wouldn't go away. The only tool I ever had wasn't working for me, and I was desperate. I drank all evening, drank into the night. And eventually, I found myself sitting on the edge of that bed with a pistol in my hand. I was out of ideas. I didn't know what to do. For some reason, I put the pistol away and went into the bathroom. The sun was just coming up at this point. And I remember my legs were shaky, and I sat on the edge of the tub that was parallel to the vanity so I could look in the mirror. And of course, I looked awful. I looked like a guy that had been up all night, because I was. And I did something at that point that I'd done before, but never fully done. I never had done it with such honesty and authenticity. I prayed. And the simplest prayer in the world, I think, four words. God, please help me. That's all I said. And at this point, when I did it, it wasn't just words. It came from somewhere really down deep inside, because I was completely out of ideas. I didn't know what to do, so I turned to this in desperation. And that's when it happened for me. That's when things changed. That's when I heard a voice. And it wasn't really a voice as much as it was a sensation down inside me. And it said, "It's time." And I knew what that meant. I knew it was time to change my life. I knew it was time to quit drinking and all the other bad behaviors that I was doing. And so this emotion hit me, came over me, and it was new. I hadn't felt it. I don't think I'd ever felt it before. It was peaceful, and it was calm, and it was so powerful and perfect. It was hope. I hadn't felt hope in so long, and the evidence pointed to the fact that I shouldn't have hope, because as I did the forensics on my life, I looked back and said, yesterday was bad, the day before that was terrible, the day before that, you didn't even want to hear about that. So why wouldn't I think tomorrow is going to be bad as well? But at this point, I realized, wow, it might be okay, and that's what I call hope. It was fleeting, and it was just a moment, but it was very strong and it was very powerful. So I'd love to tell you that everything was okay from that point on. Wouldn't that be a great story? That's not how it goes. I'm hard-headed and difficult and self-centered. So that was just the very beginning of a story. I quit drinking right after that, and haven't felt the need to use any mind-altering chemicals since November 16th, 2006. So I've been on that journey for a little while. learned to manage the depression through getting a lot of help and educating myself and working on myself. So it's still a journey that I'm on today. And so I can't tell you that I'm well, I can't tell you that I'm fixed, but I can tell you that I'm better. And I can tell you that I have hope today, and it's not fleeting and momentary like it was in that night. It's part of me, and it's every day, and it's all the time. And one of the most important things here is that I found the strength to follow my passion. Went back to school, got a master's degree, earned my license to practice psychotherapy. I built and am continuing to build a private practice. The Peachtree City Therapy Group is the group that I'm associated with now in Peachtree City. And most importantly, in all areas of my life, I serve God by serving His creation and helping others who suffer either like I did or having their own battles. The point is, I got better, and people get better. So it brings me back to my original question: why do we tell stories? I think there are a few really important reasons why we tell stories. First reason is that we tell stories to connect to the emotions behind them so that we can move forward and grow. So as I tell my story, I remember how sad and hopeless I felt, and that allows me to have perspective on where I am now. You know, I was there, I am here, and that's motivating. I can see how much I've grown. That allows me to push forward and hope for more growth going forward. The second reason we tell our stories, I think, is that our stories allow us to make a difference in the world. My story gave me the courage to go back to school and learn to be effective in helping people. And today I'm 100% sure I'm making a difference in the world. It's one person at a time usually, but that's okay. I'm happy with that. I see people in my office all the time get better and learn about themselves and grow and move past the difficulties they're having. The third reason we tell our stories is that our stories allow us to authentically connect with other people. So when I put down my "I'm fine, everything's good" mask, when I take that mask off and put it down, and I tell the truth about how I feel, both good, bad, when I'm honest about what I'm experiencing, what I do is I let other people see me, not the version of me that I want them to see, but the real me, and get to know me. And that's where connection happens, when we can share with each other authentically. The fourth reason we tell our stories, it's important to tell our stories, is that we heal ourselves and others, particularly when the story allows us to feel the emotions. I know, I can tell you, every time I tell my story, I get a little bit healthier, and a little bit healthier. Another reason we tell our stories is that our stories allow us to learn about ourselves. I know it seems funny sometimes when we talk about learning about ourselves, we say, well, I'm me. Of course I know who I am. And to a certain extent that's true, but I think my experience is there's always a deeper level of knowing about ourselves that we can always sort of strive to. And that's where a lot of healing and a lot of growth exists. So for me, through my story, I've learned why I turn to the bad habits that I turn to. And deep inside, I always felt less than. I felt broken. I felt different than other people. Understanding this about myself allowed me to start to get better. I couldn't begin my journey until I understood that about myself, and my story shined the light on that feeling. Number 6 reason we tell our stories that are just important to is that we begin or continue a spiritual journey. So for me, I'm hard-headed. I tried everything else first until I was brought quite literally to my knees. That had to happen in order for me to start getting better. So here's what I understand. I understand that for me, I had to go through all the struggles that I went through. This bad thing had to happen. I had to lose that job. I had to have this bad experience. I had to have that argument. I had to have this loss, that loss, the other loss. I had to have all that to get where I am today, wherever that is. For me, there's no shortcuts. Of course, I'm the kind of person that doesn't believe you when you tell me something. If you tell me the stove is hot, I have to say, let me just check that for myself and get burned. I'm hard-headed that way. So there are no shortcuts, and my story allows me to see this. And finally, our stories allow us to connect our past and glimpse our future. And so when I tell my story, I can see where I was a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or more. And I can see where I am now, and I can sort of, like in geometry class, there's a point here and a point here. We connect those dots, and we can look out into the future and see, wow, if I've grown and I've changed this much over the past however many months or years, look what's possible. I see that trajectory, and I see the hope of the future, and it looks awesome. So I'll never be famous, and that's okay. I don't want to be famous. I have no interest at all in being famous. But I can have some influence on my little tiny piece of the universe that I inhabit. And that's part of my legacy. My legacy is to impact the people around me and to share my story and try to bring folks along with me on a journey of healing. And my family is another part of my journey. You know, my wife didn't have to bury her husband at 35, which looked like that was the path that I was on. My daughter gets to grow up with a father who's imperfect but trying really hard to get better. The thing about stories is that everyone has one, and every single story is important. I encourage everyone in this room to tell your story. You know, figure out what your story is and tell it. Put it on paper, put it on video, say it out loud, shout it from the rooftops. Tell everybody your story. And create your legacy. Do it with courage. Do it with conviction. Do it with authenticity. Your story is important, and what you have to share with the world is critically important. So I encourage you to do it. Thanks for letting me share with you today. Do you guys have any questions? I work to your point, and Kimberly does as well. We work with a lot of adults with substance abuse issues, and it's easy to think about the drug addict as the typical sort of kid who just smokes pot and uses heroin and gets drunk on the weekends or whatever. But really, it happens to a lot of sort of mainstream people. And here's what happens. Here's how people get addicted to opiates. In my career, I've known exactly one person who got hooked on pain pills just because she wanted to try them. Every single other person I've ever worked with who got addicted to opiates, I'm talking about hydrocodone, oxycodone, those sorts of things, pain pills, had a dental surgery, had a knee injury, a hip injury, a back injury. They fell and hit their head, went to the doctor, went to the dentist, had a couple, had prescribed, it was appropriately prescribed, but for some people, there's something in the DNA of some people that just clicks when that medication hits their body. Even for people who aren't predisposed for addiction, though, you can become addicted to opiates in as little as 7 days. 7 days, you can get physically addicted to the point where you have withdrawal. It's real, happens every single day in our community. So I advise people to advocate for yourself. Nobody's going to advocate for you like you will. And just because your doctor's wearing a fancy white coat, it does not mean he or she knows everything. He or she works for you. Ask questions. Ask lots of questions. Is there an alternative to this drug? What are the side effects? What are all the side effects? Is this dangerous? Is this really dangerous? No, really, is this dangerous? That's your right to do that and to talk to your physicians like that.
We've also had people right here in this center that have been over-medicated on the drug. I've been here 22 years, so I've seen things, and Miss Ida has too, but we have actually seen people that have been over-medicated on the drug. So that's the reason why I'm saying, know yourself, know who you are talking to. Of course you need to have trust in your doctor.
Yeah.
But like you said, they don't know everything. Be honest with them. Okay, don't try to hide behind your medications either. Okay? All right.
I think this lady had a question, ma'am.
Go ahead, Miss.
Did you have a question?
I did have a question. My question is how long should you stay on one medication? What is the length of time to stay on that medication?
Okay, first of all, I'm not a physician. I didn't go to medical school or nursing school.
Now listen, if the doctor prescribes you on this medication, does he need to give you a limited time to stay on this medication?
I think that's best practice, especially if it's something like a pain medication. Right. I can't. I'm not really equipped to speak on things like blood pressure medication. Follow your doctor's advice on that. But I can't tell you anything that's mood altering, anything that you take and it makes you feel a certain way. Those are the kinds of things that I deal with a lot. And anything like that, if you get hurt, by all means, take something to make the pain go away. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying go into it with your eyes wide open and take it, to your point, take it for as little time as you possibly can stand it.
But you know, I was on this medication, and oh boy, it made me feel so good. And they asked me how was I feeling. I said, I feel just great when I take it. That's all it is. Some patients you off that because you have become addicted. I had become addicted to this special medication.
Yeah.
But I took it. I feel like I was a new young, and I'm still in new.
Yeah,
It's out there.
that's how it happens. Ma'am in the back.
Yeah, you know, a lot of times people have been instructed, not to take pain medication. You'll get hooked on pain medication, you'll get hooked on pain medication. And some people, they be hurt, they be scared to take pain medication.
Yeah.
You know, they're scared they're gonna get hooked. And you know, and you said, if you hurt, take pain medication.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I'm not mad at opiates. I'm not mad at drugs. In fact, if opiates didn't exist, we couldn't do things like surgery. You know, but that's what makes modern medicine possible. Nobody wants to have surgery and be awake through it. So opiates make that possible. And opiates are, they certainly play a role in pain management, especially for serious stuff that we have done. There's no getting around it. But what I encourage people to do is just to be really, really careful. I just always encourage people to manage the pain, but also manage the medication as well.
You've been on medication forever, means like a long term. How would you know you're addicted to it?
If you stop taking it and you have withdrawal symptoms,
Yeah, this is not a laughing matter.
yeah.
Well, you know,
With
it's
all,
but
it's
you know,
not
just,
anything broken.
No.
But it has to be necessity.
Yeah.
You need to get off the road.
It's an interesting point because when you're on medication for a long time, there's this reverse effect where you actually become more susceptible to pain when you're on pain medication for a long time. I had a patient when I worked in a treatment center. He came and he was in his 60s, I guess, and he had a really bad car wreck when he was about 20, and so he had chronic pain his entire life. And there's no exaggeration at all. In order to manage his medication, he had a spreadsheet with this list. I mean, it must have been 40 things. It was, everything I've ever heard of and 100 things I hadn't. And he was still in pain. And what we did was we gradually titrated him off, reduced his medication all across the board. And he was there about 2 months or so. And at the end of that, excuse me, at the end of that 2 months, he was on a couple of pain pills and really wasn't in pain. And so being on that medication all that time actually made his pain worse. Ask your doctor about that. And there's a lot to be said for managing pain with over-the-counter medications, and ice works really well. Elevating a limb that's injured, and if you have a knee injury. Good questions. All right. Well, I guess that's it then. Thank y'all.